So the big question is this: how do you take $42,000 in assets in a one TrackMan Bay facility in the back of a CrossFit gym and turn it into a 12 bay, 17,000 square foot training facility in just a few years? That's the question, and this is the podcast that's going to give you the answer. Welcome to Inside the Room on Stockshot Secrets. All right, business owners, I have something to tell you that will single-handedly transform the way that you run your business, think about your business, market your business, sell your business forever and eternity. And it is the most important thing, in my opinion, of what you need to do to build a successful business. Now, what I am talking about is this thing that you hopefully you know about, and it's called LTV to CAC, or what some would even call LTGP to CAC. Now, LTV to CAC, in my opinion, is the most important ratio, the most important metric that you need to understand to running a successful business. Now, what LTV to CAC is, it is the lifetime value of a customer, meaning the amount of money that a customer will spend within your facility relative to the cost to acquiring that customer. So let me explain a little bit of what I see in the industry, in golf facilities, and business in general, of where they go wrong with this understanding. Is if you look back like at the golf room, and I'll just kind of use myself as the example. If you look back at the golf room in its first initial onset of like when I was building it in 2016, we were in the business of basically if someone came to me in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and they're like, hey, Kyle, how do you get a customer to come to the golf room? I was like, I have no idea. Hopefully they tell their friends. We're big word of mouth people. And you're like, that doesn't seem very predictable because you don't know how many people are coming in, right? And then you would say, well, Kyle, like how much money, if you will, does the player spend at the golf room? I was like, I don't know. We just kind of sell one-off lessons or like some packages of like lessons of 5, so on and so forth. So we basically had no system in process of acquiring a customer, and we had no system in process of actually extending the lifetime value of the customer. We were just always hoping that the person would book another lesson, which is really, really unpredictable and not a very systematic way of going about building a business, right? So what has happened is over the course of me learning and getting smarter, and we continue to like grow as human beings and business owners, right? Because you guys are listening to this because you guys want to get better too. And this is where like I had this discovery, about 3-4 years ago, which is first and foremost, we have to have a steady stream. So let's first talk about the CAC part, the cost to acquire. We have to have a steady stream of ways to acquire the customer. And it cannot be just word of mouth. That's one way, right? Like we can do things at our facilities like, hey, let's have like a member appreciation night to where we serve like some wine and food and whatever, and we bring the highest spending clients to the room, and then we have those highest spending clients maybe bring a friend and their friends. If they're friends with our higher spending clients, they're probably going to be passionate golfers too and great clients as well. And that's word of mouth marketing. Like that's a good one, right? Like, but we'd also, there's things that we need to do to also develop other leads that create a constant flow of new people coming into the golf room. So that would be things like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, right? Like it could be outreach projects with like outings at our home courses, like around our cities, so on and so forth, right? Now, when we do it and we talk about, let's just say, we'll just kind of explain this in some of the math, right? Let's just say, for example, for round numbers, you go to Facebook and you go, okay, here is $1,000, right? So you give Mark Zuckerberg $1,000 at Facebook and you run an ad. And through that ad, right, you get, let's say, 100 people to click on the ad, right? Now, out of the 100 people that click on the ad, you get 10 people to actually buy something, right? So they actually purchased something. So for that would mean that your cost to acquire would be $100 to acquire that customer, right? So I spent $1,000 with Mark Zuckerberg. I then got 100 people to go to the website. The website converted on the offer that I was doing on the website at 10%, which would be really high, right? But You got 10% of the people to actually buy. That means your cost to acquire was $100 because 10 people, or $1,000 divided by 10 is 100, right? So my CAC, my cost to acquire is $100. So now once the person comes into the golf room or they come into your business, now it's a matter of like, how can I get this person to stay and not leave the golf room, right? So this is where I've developed a concept called the engagement flywheel, to where you're trying to create a product where the engagement around the client is giving the client everything that they need so that they don't need to go anywhere else, so that they essentially want to engage with your process as much as possible, and therefore they are there as long as possible. So this would be this would be increasing the LTV, so like the lifetime value of the customer. So if on average the person is spending $500 a month and they are there 10 months, now your lifetime value is now $5,000, right? So I would spend $100 to get $5,000. Like, that's a pretty good ROI, meaning return on investment. If I put $100 in the ATM and it gave me $5,000 back, that sounds like I'm winning. Where's the next ATM so that I can do that again, right? So when you start to understand this ATM game, or what you'll say LTV to CAC, it starts to be really easy how to make your marketing decisions, your sales decisions, your purchasing decisions, what you need to do in the business so that you can help scale the business to therefore make more money, right? Because that LTV thing is probably at the same token, which is probably another podcast in itself. It's the easiest way also to, aside from maybe just price increases, right? That's an easy way to like make more revenue or more profit. But the other thing is just, there's kind of a saying that it's like, what is the thing that we could do within the business that's going to have the greatest impact, and what resources are needed to do it? So let's say, for example, you're looking at your P&L, you're looking at your balance sheet, and you're like, man, we need to make more money. Well, we could acquire more customers, but if you're looking at the LTV and you're like, well, our customer is only here 3 months. Well, what would happen if you had, let's say over the course of a year, you have 100 members, or let's say you have 100 members, and every member is spending $500, right? So that means you're making $50,000 off those members. Well, you go, what if I had, and the LTV, like the time duration in which that member is at your facility is say 3 months. And you go, well, what if we took the LTV from 3 months to 4 months? Well, that's another $50,000. So rather than having to like create a new program or do something else, you just go, we just have to do a better job of what we're doing. Those are the resources that we need to do. Like, we don't need to buy more technology. We don't need to spend more on marketing. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. We just need to create a better system, a better engagement flywheel, so that now the customer wants to stay within our flywheel longer, and therefore they will increase the LTV, and therefore we can make more money. And one of the best sayings that you got to understand this is this really, really smart marketing guy. I would suggest listening and learning from him. And his name is Dan Kennedy. And one of Dan Kennedy's mantras is, whoever can spend the most money to acquire the customer wins. And it took me a while, like maybe I'm stupid. It took me a while to understand, like, what the hell does that even mean? Who can ever spend the most money to acquire a customer wins. And you go, I thought we would want to spend the least amount of money to acquire a customer. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So let me explain. So at the golf room, right, let's just say, for example, as an analogy, and we'll keep using round numbers, let's just say at the golf room, you have a product for, let's say, junior golfers. And the junior golfer on average spends, if he comes into, like, let's say an academy of yours, he spends $10,000 in a year, right? And if they come in at the age of 13, they have the amount of years that you have now forecasted. You go, this person would probably be here for like 5 years. So they're going to be there for $50,000 on average. That's the LTV. Well, if someone came up to me and they go, hey, let's just say this, or they came up to you and you have this customer and they know they come at 13, they're there for 5 years, they're going to spend $50,000 over 5 years. and someone said to you, and they came up to you, and you didn't know what this LTV to CAC meant, right? And you didn't think about this and the lifetime value. And they came up to you and they said, hey, I have a junior golfer who's 13. They're super passionate, and they're willing to sign on with you 100%, but you need to give me $20,000 for them to do it. You'd go, right now, without understanding LTV to CAC, you'd go, no, right? I'm not paying 20 grand. And I go, then for me, I go, I'll pay 20 grand because I'll pay 20 grand because I know that if I give you 20 grand, he's going to give me 50 grand. I just made 30 grand, right? And if you have, like, if you look at it even on, like, if you take what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, if you have an LTGP, which is the gross profit, that's where you have to take all the costs associated with the LTV. So you have the revenue, but then it's like, okay, well, I got to like pay for the facility, and I got to pay for like the TrackMan, I got to pay for the golf course, and I got to pay for the turf, and I got to pay like blah, blah, blah. Let's just say your margin, all that stuff is, let's say it's 20%. So even in the event under this analogy, if a customer came to me or someone came to me or some client, they go, I'll give you a client for $20,000. And I go, okay, because I know that now they've given me, I'm going to have a $30,000 surplus of revenue. And if I'm operating that $30,000 at a 20% clip, that means I just made $6,000. So once again, I basically gave them 20, I got 50, and I made 6. That's a pretty good ROI. Right? So when you understand, like, this is basically the stock market of business, right? So like, we invest in Apple at $80 a share and hope that it goes to 105, right? And you go, hey, yay, I made $25, right? This is the same way that you have to understand your business, and our stock market is LTV to CAC. So what is the cost to acquire the customer? And then once you've acquired the customer, then it's about extending their LTV as long as you can, right? For the benefit of the player, right? You're not just like nickeling and diming them and upselling them on stupid stuff. You need to have a product that's really good and it's helping them, right? Because ultimately we are here to help players and fulfill like their unique God-given design. And with us, it's through the game of golf. You might be through like being a chiropractor or a dentist or whatever it may be, an insurance agent, right? So, but when you do this, you need to have a product service. That's why the golf room's the golf room, right? Because we have we have lessons, we have fitness, we have club fitting, we have practice, we have sports psychology, we have playing lessons. We have all these different things that make the engagement flywheel happen so that we can help the player no matter where they are, when they are, what time of the year it is, and it allows us to do it. So it's the most important thing that I focus on within the golf room, and it's something that I want you to focus on. Now, what I want to do is I want to bring in a former business owner that will basically help kind of talk a little bit about this, and we can see some real-life examples of how this might have helped or hurt his business when he was doing it. Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. All right, so with me is Carson Stone. So Carson, if you don't happen to know, Carson was the first instructor that I ever hired. Worked with me for 4 years-ish. Yeah, right?
4 years.
Then went and built an academy down in Kentucky.
Going on 5 years now.
Now we're going in. Now we're entering our 5th. Went and opened a facility in Kentucky, probably the best facility in Kentucky, still standing.
Yeah.
Called Bluegrass Academy in Kentucky. Ran that for 4 years.
Basically until May of last year.
Yeah. And now back at the golf room. That's still handing, but basically kind of sold your equity share and you're back. But as a business owner, right, someone you've came in, you were in the golf room for 4 years. So what I want to talk a little bit about, just so that we can create some more context to this LTV to CAC, is if you think back to what the original, because at the beginning of the podcast, which was what you were a part of, right? Yeah. This LTV to CAC was not even in that. We never even talked about that. I mean, I remember I hired marketing companies and they were like, hey, we're going to run an ad and then send them to the landing page. And I was like, what the hell is a landing page? And they're like, there's this landing thing where they're like, you're going to sell them on a lesson, and then we're going to build a page that's just for the lessons. And I was like, that's a stupid idea. Just send them to thegolfroom.com so that they can see all the stuff that we do, right? And that was, and now I am like a marketing sales psycho. But back then, I mean, I didn't know what a landing page was. I thought marketing was ridiculous. And with our original form of what TGR was at the inception was, I mean, we had the new student assessment wasn't a new student assessment.
It was a lesson.
It was a lesson.
Like,
we just fixed your stuff, right?
First off,
it was literally just a title. We had no way of really acquiring customers, like a systematic way. We had some stuff that we did for junior golfers, but there was no way for the recreation. It was just like, we hope the guys at Brookside call, right? And then
word of mouth
marketing, which is what most of you guys are probably doing, right? You're like, how do you grow your business? You're like, my friends tell my friends. I'm like, that's a way, but it's not like, that's not sustainable. I mean, it is sustainable. It's actually the best marketing you can have, but I should say it's not predictable because you don't know, like, you know, I don't know if I'm going to, I just hope that you're going to tell your friends, like, when you're having a beer, right? So there was that piece. And then at the same time, in the original one, it was kind of like, okay, we had a little bit of it where it's like, okay, we would sell basically package of lessons. And then there was the TrackMan membership, which they were apart from each other. They weren't together.
Yeah.
And now it's changed. But what were some of like your growing pains as a facility owner? And you probably knew more than most even coming to Bluegrass because like you had been at the golf room for 4 years, and you kind of had seen some of the stuff. But like, were you guys doing anything like, were you ever thinking about this LTV to CAC or like, how did it, you know, did it change what you did in growing growing Bluegrass? Or maybe you were like, no, actually looking back, I wasn't doing that. I mean, you, like I said, you knew more than most being here and being under the umbrella because we were starting to really engage that as you kind of departed in 2021 or 2020. But just kind of what was kind of your learning experience with it as a former business owner?
Yeah, I don't think it was at the forefront of what we were doing. And, you know, when you're starting a business, you know, it consumes you a lot, right? So then you're thinking about trying to grow constantly. And, you know, word of mouth is the most powerful. But I think always in the back of my mind, I don't know about you, but like I would always feel like, okay, is word of mouth, you know, obviously you believe in your product, you're doing, you know, but in terms of growing, you know, does that sustain the growth that you want? You know, does that allow you to kind of achieve some of your goals? And I think you got to go outside of that to acquire new customers, right? Because word of mouth is somewhat limited. It's obviously the most powerful, but at the same time, you know, how do you reach those people that you might, you know, not normally?
Yeah, because I think ultimately what you guys are trying to do as business owners is you're trying to create essentially a spigot. Yeah. Like you want a spigot that you can turn the leads on and you can turn the leads off. You can turn it, and you basically can grow your business at will.
Sure.
Right? So you can be like, hey, we're going to run this campaign. I know this campaign works. This is what we say. This is where we do it. This is how much we spend. This is what our cost to acquire. Like, this is what it is. Like, and when you guys start to understand this ratio, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but we had a very, very powerful organization, we'll say organizations just to keep it clear, come to me about a month ago, and they go, hey, we want to do this sponsorship thing. And I want you guys to do this, right? It was like this Pro-Am thing and this golf thing and this kids club and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, they go, the cost of it is $6,000. So when you start to understand the CAC to LTV, the CAC to LTV ratio allows me to basically back into it. So, and I understand all the other math, right? So I go, okay, so I go, you know, if we're doing it, for example, and I go, okay, so we're going to have I'll just make up a story. So it's like, we're going to go do this event and we're going to have a banner ad. Like there's going to be a poster at an event, right? So if I have a poster at an event, the average scan rate, you probably didn't know this, the average scan rate on a QR code, the national average is 12.8%.
I had no idea.
Bingo. There you go. So if you have a banner, 12.8%, so let's just say the tournament, I'll pull up my calculator here, right? Let's just say this event has 10,000 people, right? So they have 10,000 people, and 12.8% are going to scan the thing, which means 1,280 people now go to your site to see your thing. But it doesn't stop there.
No.
Because now the selling rate is probably somewhere around, a good sale rate would be around 2%. So that means out of the 10,000 people, I have 25 people that now bought. So out of the 25 people that now bought, and they spent, let's say, $100 on your thing, that's $2,560. So we'll just say $2,500, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if the 25 people, if we know that they then fall into like a membership at, let's say 30%, that's a normal close rate. That's 8 people. And then if you know the LTV, let's say the LTV of your facility is, I don't know, let's just call it $2,000. That's $1,650 plus the $2,500, so you're at like $19,000. And if the guy came back and was like, "Hey, the sponsorship is $15,000," well, you also have to remember the $16,000 is revenue, or it's at, let's say 19. So the 19,000 is revenue. Well, if you operate at a 20% clip in like profit, that's $3,800. And if the guy's like, it's $6,000, you go, that's a terrible business deal. So now your LTV to CAC ratio, you really want it to be at least about 3-to-1.
Interesting.
So now if you take that, right, you go, no, it's not worth $6,000. I'll pay you $1,266 and 66 cents.
Yeah.
It's not worth $6,000. And the marketers, what's crazy about it, Carson, is the marketers don't even do this. They pull these numbers that are like the sponsorship deals literally out of the sky. And they're like, we think it's worth this. It's like, no, it's not. It's worth $1,200. That's what it's worth, because I need to have a 3-to-1 CAC to LTV ratio for this to be worth my time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'd be like $6,000 to 10,000 golfers. That sounds great.
Well, and
it's like,
I think it's defining it, right? Like there's obviously as a small business, there's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
Putting $6,000 up.
Right.
And, you work hard for that. And then it's like, that's it. That's for me too, especially being in the golf industry. I know you've mentioned a couple others, but like, teaching and running your own thing, and you believe in your product, but when do you have time to think about some of this stuff? It's
this is what I think about in the middle of my sleep, right?
I know, but it's a lot of times like with small businesses, I think it gets lost in the back burner because you're so consumed with your everyday product.
I know. Well, that's
but this is the
and that's
key
where
to
that's where the business owner, they need to do. This is another. I'm actually going to do a podcast on this as well, but it's because the business owner is so busy working in the business,
wearing too many hats.
They're working in the business. They're not working on the business,
yeah.
And there's a big difference, right? And I think probably the more realistic one for the small business guy, like the Bluegrass Academy where you were at, is you have like the person and not taking. Listen, like, let me phrase this so I don't get a stone thrown at me. Like, I love helping people and I love philanthropy.
Yeah.
But if people come to me and they go, "Would you like to donate to this thing?" And I go, maybe, but like if I want to go donate to something, I will go donate to it, or I will give money to my church, or I will do this, right? Now, unless it's a cause that I'm like, oh, actually, I'm like really supportive of this, right? But if someone is coming and saying, "Would you like to donate to something?" that really is almost like a marketing opportunity. So a lot of times, I'm sure you got this all the time at Kentucky at Bluegrass Academy, and our facility owners get it and golf courses get it. They go, "Hey, would you like to donate to this outing that we're doing?" And you go, "Sure." And they go, "How much is the donation?" And they go, "It's $500.
Yeah.
And you go, "Cool. How many players are playing?" And they go, "We have a full field at 142. And you go, "Cool. What do I get?" And they go, we'll just go back to the sign thing. We're going to put a sign on the tee box. You go, "Cool." So I got 142 people times let's just say it's the 12%. That's 18 people sign. Then they're going to go to the website, and I'm going to convert at 2%. Great. I got 0.36 tenths of a human being.
Yeah.
Which is like, It's just a bad business investment, right? So when you start to understand this LTV to CAC, it basically frames every decision that you make, how to move the needle. Do I invest here? Do I invest there? What do I need to do? And from this whole thing, with the engagement flywheel, your entire business is laid out to where it's like, okay, how do I have the facility built to the design, to the texture, to the feel, to the taste, to the color, to the smell, so that when the person comes in, they want to be here. Okay, how do I design the front operation staff so when the guy walks through the door, the touch, the taste, the feel, the smell, how they articulate, how they talk, what they look like, what they wear increases the LTV. Okay, then they go to the new student assessment. How does that whole thing now frame what the journey is going to be like within their facility? Then when they go to the lesson tee, how does that whole thing frame so that they're engaging in the flywheel? And then all of these systems and the whole model is built off of this one parameter that no one ever thinks about.
Yeah. And just even you were saying like, okay, hey, you get an opportunity to sponsor a outing or, a high school golf tournament or whatever it is. It's like, being in the community out of the kindness of your heart, you're kind of picking and choosing the people you have relationships with versus looking at like the numbers don't lie, right? So it's like, so that is interesting information, and it's like, okay, well, when you make a decision, at the end of the day, like, numbers, speak.
Well, we are, the facilities, and some of them are, but like we're not a 501c3. Like the facilities are making money, so like that's where if there was one piece of advice, you go, well, what do you do about the outings? The question that we have, that we do, that you guys could kind of take is, and for anybody who's ever going to ask for money, this is what's coming at you, is we just go, hey, great, you have 142 people that are playing. Do I get to all those contacts?
Yeah.
Because see, now it's different, because now if I got 142 contacts, I know my open rate on an email is 70%. That's 99 people, right? Then I can get them to click on a thing, which is probably at a 40% clip, and then I can sell those 39 at, I can warm them up and like blah, 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 and give them a free thing and like build their value and so on and so forth. So that's where, if you're doing those things, it's very important that if you're trying to own the contact so that then you can re-engage with them and earn trust. Because once you do that, now it's about essentially following. And I know you and I talked about this, maybe I think in your previous tenor at TGR, maybe a little bit. I feel like we had some conversation over cocktails over this at one time, but
yeah,
you have to fall into like basically the person's 5 love languages. So like they need like quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, like these things. So you have to, once you get the contact, now it's like, okay, what can I do so that this person knows that I love them? Okay, let me do an acts of service. Like, I'm going to just send you a gift. Merry Christmas, here's a shirt, right? Or it's like, let me spend quality time. Like, I'm going to give you a free, like, 15-minute analysis or whatever it may be, because you have to earn their trust, because there's no reason that they should give you money. You're just another guy, right?
They
just
have a lot of options out there.
Yeah, just like courting a chick, or if whatever, right? So, that's one of these things. This LTV to CAC is really, really important. It's really overlooked, and that's why I want to share with you guys, because when you do it, it single-handedly will transform your company forever. So thank you so much for joining. Hope you guys learned it. Take notes, and best of luck. If you guys do need any help with your business, know that I do have a consulting side that you guys can come visit the golf room, and basically we're going to open up the lid to the golf room, tell you everything that we do so that you can build a robust business plan for yourself and increase this LTV to CAC, because it will, if you increase this, it basically will increase your bank wad. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you back here next time. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. I want to invite you, the business owner who would like to learn how to scale your revenue to make more money inside your business. I want to invite you to Columbus. Spend a few days with me where I show you everything that we do at the golf room to build our business to go from like 1 bay to 2 bays, and then 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, 4 to 6 and 6 to 12, and now the largest player development facility in America. I'm going to show you everything we have, basically give you the franchise code, if you will, on how we go about our business. So I want to invite you to learn more about it. Just go to thegolfroom.com/business-coaching, and you can learn all about this process and see if it's a good fit for you. And hopefully I see you soon in Columbus, Ohio.